Weber's law is a principle in psychology and sensory perception that describes how humans perceive differences between stimuli. According to this law, the change needed to detect a difference in stimulus is proportional to the original stimulus's intensity. This means that the greater the initial intensity of a stimulus, the larger the change required for individuals to notice a difference. For example, if you are holding a lightweight and someone adds a tiny bit more weight, you may not notice the difference. However, if you are lifting a much heavier weight, a smaller additional weight might be noticeable. This relationship can be mathematically expressed as delta y over I equals k, where delta I is the change in stimulus, I is the original stimulus, and k is a constant. Now let's look at some examples of Weber's law in practice. One common illustration is in the context of sound. If you are in a quiet room and someone speaks softly, you can easily notice a change in their voice. However, in a loud environment, a much louder voice may be needed for you to notice a difference. Another example can be seen in shopping. If a shirt costs $10 and the price increases to $11, you might notice that change fairly easily. However, if the shirt costs $100 and increases to $101, the change might seem insignificant, and you may not notice it at all. These examples highlight how our perception of change is relative to the initial conditions. Weber's law has many applications in various fields, including marketing, education, and psychology. In marketing, businesses can leverage this principle by understanding how consumers perceive price increases. For example, a store may find that a small increase in the price of a lower-cost item is more likely to be noticed than an identical increase on a luxury item. Similarly, in education, teachers can utilize Weber's law when adjusting test difficulties. Small changes in a relatively easy test may be easily detected by students, while changes in a very difficult test might need to be more significant to be noticed. Additionally, in clinical psychology, therapists can apply Weber's law to understand patients' sensory thresholds, helping them gauge treatment efficacy. Despite its usefulness, Weber's law has some limitations that are important to recognize. One limitation is that it primarily applies to conditions of stimulus perception that vary in intensity. However, when stimuli are at extreme levels, such as very loud sounds or very bright lights, the law might not hold as well, and perception can change differently. Another limitation is that Weber's law does not account for individual differences. Factors such as age, personal experiences, and even cultural background can influence how someone perceives changes in stimuli. Therefore, what might hold true for one person may not necessarily apply to another, highlighting the need for careful application of the law in real-world settings. Weber's law was formulated by the German physiologist Ernst Heinrich Weber in the 19th century. His work marked one of the early efforts to scientifically study human perception and sensory processing. Weber's findings were later expanded upon by the philosopher Gustav Fechner, who developed a more comprehensive theory of psychophysics. This led to a deeper understanding of how humans perceive physical stimuli, laying the groundwork for experimental psychology. The historical context of Weber's law shows the development of systematic approaches to studying human senses, which remained influential in shaping many areas of psychology and sensory research today.